Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, the Supreme Court rules on Arizona's voter registration law and 2 same-sex marriage cases. And the U.S. Senate passes comprehensive immigration reform. Those stories and more next on the Journalists Roundtable.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining me tonight are Aliyah Beard-Rao of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Mark Brody from KJZZ Radio. Quite the week at the Supreme Court as a number of landmark decisions were handed down. Aliyah, let's start with this Defense of Marriage Act. What was the court looking at? What did they decide?
The court was looking at the portion of the act that basically defines marriage as between a man and a woman only as it pertains to federal law. So Social Security, taxes, any sort of federal benefit. I think there's about 1,100, 1,300 of them.
Mm-hmm. And was this decision a surprise?
I don't think so. The general population, I mean, you know, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of response, but it seemed like the lawyers seemed to think this was expected.
Well, and let's see, the basis was, curiously enough, states' rights. What Justice Kennedy said was, we depend on the states to define who can get married. Some states, first cousins can marry. We allow that, and we allow the states to do that. Having allowed the couples of the same sex to marry in California now, obviously, with Prop 8 in New York, anywhere else, then the federal government frustrates that by saying, except for federal benefits, you know, the inheritance tax, you know, filing jointly and all that. And they said, you cannot have the federal government usurping the inherent power of the states to decide who can marry.
And as far as Arizona, same-sex couples in Arizona, what impact are we looking at here?
Not much. I mean, there's some question about folks who are on military bases. There's some immigration-related green card type benefits that could be changing for folks here in Arizona. But the state constitution says, you know, marriage is a union between one man and one woman. So if gay marriage, same-sex marriage is not really much of an issue here, at least not right now.
And the important part is that it even says that if you legally are gay married in New York and you move here, New York, you can file joint returns now under federal law. You move to Arizona, you lose that right because Arizona does not recognize your marriage. And so there's a whole set of new lawsuits, I think, coming, and I think Aliyah's talked about this too, because of the fact that you now have unequal treatment where you got this treatment in New York and you move to Arizona and you get a different treatment because of Arizona's recognition.
Right. It seems like an invitation for lawsuits here.
Absolutely, and that seems to be the one thing. The Supreme Court did not say that gay marriage is legal nationwide. They did not say the Constitution says you should have gay marriage, you should allow gay marriage. So basically it seems to set it up for, you know, a couple in Arizona to maybe attempt to get married and then file a federal lawsuit saying, well, so-and-so in California can do it, I can't, let's go to the Supreme Court and actually get them to make the decision as to whether same-sex marriage needs to be a constitutional right.
And there's one other little point in there, you know, that Aliyah's point was that they could have used the California Prop 8 case to decide gays can marry. But DOMA actually has 2 applicable sections. The one that was overturned deals with the federal benefits. There's another section of DOMA which wasn't up. This is the one that says states do not need to give full faith and credit to the marriages of another state. Now, this has got a constitutional problem, too, because in general, if I enter into a contract in New York, that contract is presumed valid here, except for that. And I see another challenge coming to that section of the Defense of Marriage Act that says whether Arizona wants to allow people to marry here is one thing, but if I am legally married in New York, I get to stay legally married here.
Yeah, and the issue with the Defense of Marriage case was not, you know, it's not fair that, you know, same-sex partners can't be married across the country. It's a woman whose partner died, whose spouse died, and had to pay a lot of money in taxes that she wouldn't have had to pay had they been legally, you know, had the federal government recognize legal marriages. In the Prop 8 case, it wasn't, you know, Prop 8 is unconstitutional. It's the people challenging the lower court ruling didn't have standing. So as Aliyah said, the justices really didn't say one way or the other, yes, you know, same-sex marriage bans are unconstitutional or same-sex marriages have to be allowed everywhere. They're more, you know, the Prop 8 case was almost more of a technicality.
Well, Prop 8 case, I think, was a technicality in the sense that if the, correct me if I'm wrong, the court basically said if the state's not going to defend a trial court decision, a bunch of citizens can't do it for the state. Pretty much what they decided,
Exactly.
wasn't it?
The state refused to defend Proposition 8, which basically defined, as Arizona does, defined marriage as only between a man and a woman. And so the state wouldn't do it. This group that actually pushed the proposition decided they were going to be the defendants, and the Supreme Court said, no, we don't recognize you as legal defendants.
And so back to the trial court decision stands.
Yes, and in fact, I heard on the way in this afternoon that the clerks, the Ninth Circuit lifted the stay, and they're now issuing marriage licenses again in California. There was one other interesting case that dealing with gay rights that came out of the court that does involve Arizona. You may remember back in 2008, Jan Napolitano had the rules redefined for benefits for state employees to include the domestic partners of employees, gay and straight. The legislature came in 2009 after Janet hightailed it off to Washington to play with the Obama administration and said no domestic partner benefits. Lambda Legal sued on behalf of the gay employees because they said, look, the straight employees have an option. They can get married. And both the district court and the Ninth Circuit said, no, that's discrimination. And this week, the U.S. Supreme Court said, we're not going to disturb that, left the injunction in place against Arizona cutting off those benefits. And there are close to 300 state employees who are involved.
And again, this argument was the state basically saying, well, you have the option to get, if you can't have these benefits because you're not married, and by the way, you can't get married.
Yes. Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is that there's a group that is working to put the issue of same-sex marriage back on the ballot in next November that would change the state constitution. A few years ago, Arizona voters amended the constitution to specifically define marriage as a union between one man and one woman. This initiative would change the constitution to say it's a union between two persons, which is a great broadcast word, persons. But it would basically allow for same-sex marriage. And Saturday morning, they're going to have their big kickoff for gathering petitions. And I think they have to get 250-some-odd thousand signatures by basically next year at this time. So it'll be interesting to see, A, if they can get that on the ballot, and B, if emotions and if sentiment has changed in Arizona, how voters would vote on that.
And that's going to be interesting because the measure in 2008 passed by like 56-44. Since then, we have 13 states that have legalized it. And it's sort of like medical marijuana, where people have said, well, other states have tried. Horrible things have not happened in the states where gays are allowed to marry. And you're finding more and more people who say, well, I know a gay person. The attitudes may have changed sufficiently to allow this to pass.
And Lee, I want to get to this regarding the reaction now to these Supreme Court rulings, and even the one regarding Arizona, which was basically, we're not messing with this, leave it alone. What are you hearing from both sides, and who's galvanized more by these rulings?
The folks supporting same-sex marriage are galvanized. I think it was really interesting this week. We saw, with the Voting Rights Act, we saw both sides come out. Supporters, opponents, very party line come out. With the defense of marriage in the Proposition 8 case, the supporters came out, the state lawmakers supporting the ruling came out, but the state lawmakers who consistently have supported as they call it, the traditional definition of marriage, there was nothing. There was no press releases. There was no press conferences. It was interestingly quiet from them.
Why do you think that was, Howie?
Well, I think I'll give you the best clue, which is Kathy Herod, who heads the Center for Arizona Policy. They're the folks who pushed the 2008 measure. Actually put out a release saying, well, this was sort of a victory for us because the court could have used Prop 8 to declare gay marriage legal. So she's a little Pollyanna-ish, I think, on this and saying, well, look, it was a victory, at least in that sense. We're disappointed on the DOMA case, but it doesn't change Arizona law, which the Prop 8 case could have.
And yet when you have to send out a press release to explain why you won, it's kind of a rough victory there, isn't it?
Perhaps. I mean, and to Howie's point, I think the line was something like, you should know that the court has not ruled that there is a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. It didn't trump Arizona's, the will of Arizona voters who decided that marriage should be between one man and one woman. And she also said in that same email that, her organization and presumably others will fight to keep the status quo as far as marriage in Arizona. So if this measure gets on the ballot for next year, you can expect her group and probably others to be fighting it.
Well, what does it do to the ballot next year if this issue is on? And marijuana will likely be on.
And perhaps even Medicaid.
Perhaps even Medicaid. We don't even know about that. Again, who does it galvanize? What down ticket or up ticket, if you care to say, who benefits, who loses?
I think the pro folks may be galvanized. I mean, I've heard several people say they should have waited till 2016. Wait for a presidential election. That's what gets young people out. That's what gets, and the young people in polls seem to more generally support same-sex marriage. So 2014 is a little bit iffy because we don't have a presidential election.
Are you suggesting Fred Duval versus
not
Al
bring out the
Melvin as
people.
governor is not going to bring people out?
It may bring out some of the more conservative voters,
But
so
if it brings,
that could hurt
there you
them.
go. If it,
I don't know.
I mean, Howie, if this issue is on the ballot, what does it do to everything else on the ballot? Because it could be a very interesting ballot.
I think it moves the needle. If you want to use a left-right
Yes.
situation, I think it moves the needle a little bit to the left. I think that if you get enough issues there of individual rights. Let's take a look at marijuana, for example, which also brings out the libertarians, now who may also have a referendum on the ballot over a change that was made in the law that screws them in terms of petition signatures. You bring out the libertarians, who tend to be for marijuana, for gay marriage, individual rights.
Not for Medicaid expansion.
Not for Medicaid expansion. I have a feeling that may end up in court, and we may not be seeing that on the ballot. We could discuss that. But I think that it does bring out a lot of people who believe in individual rights, and that the conservative, there are always folks, I like to call them the Sun City folks who are high-efficacy voters. They're going to turn out anyway. This may galvanize people who otherwise would not come to an off-year ballot.
Do the Sun City voters, though, who may have a son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter who just possibly could be gay, are they going to be, again, do we know how these folks are going to vote?
I mean, I think that's probably the big question. I mean, especially on some of these social issues that touch people's lives individually, as opposed to sort of the hypothetical of, well, whether or not you support same-sex marriage versus, oh, I know somebody, or my grandson or granddaughter, or my friend's grandson or granddaughter is in a relationship and can't get married. I think that's going to be the big question with an issue like same-sex marriage.
And money. Money is going to be an issue. I mean, Kathy Herron has said it's going to be a fight. If it gets on the ballot, it's going to be a fight. And probably the defining factor may be money. How much money can each side raise? You need a lot of money to collect all those petitions. You need a lot of money to do advertising.
Are you going to get a lot of money, though? And regardless of where you stand on the issue, it sure seems like a tidal wave is moving in one direction. Does the money want to fight that wave?
Oh, I think there are always groups that want to fight, and it's easy for us to throw out names, the Koch brothers or somebody who's got the pockets, and writing out a $250,000 check is pocket change for them. If they're interested in the issue, for whatever reason, they can do that. There is money on both sides, but Aaliyah's right. Who's got the money? Who's willing to write out the checks? Who's willing to fund this? And if we become a national focus, particularly if Medicaid is on the ballot,
Right.
we are the only state with Medicaid on the ballot,
Right.
we do become the national focus.
Yeah, and especially if there is a tidal wave, or at least that's the perception, folks who want to stop that tidal wave might feel, well, here's our chance.
Yes.
We really need to make a stand here.
Well, speaking of a stand, the United States Senate passed immigration reform. Now, again, this is just the Senate passing reform. Now you go on to the House, a whole different ball game there. But what did the Senate do?
They created a package that makes everybody a little unhappy. I mean, it's basically a way of talking about it. They've created a path to citizenship. They have created a system that has designed to give more workers for agriculture. They've created a system that's designed to provide more border security. I think last count, I think it was 20,000 more Border Patrol officers in the Southwest, which doubles basically what we have here now, and is designed to create a system where certain people go to the back of the line, certain people come to the front of the line, but the real key is it provides a path for citizenship. And if you've got 11 million people living in the shadows, the argument is you want to know who's here. And that's a powerful argument. You add in the security, which the governor last weekend said, at least she's in favor of the security part of it.
What exactly did she say?
Well, it was one of those things where she was talking about the specific amendments on the security, and John McCain and Jeff Flake heard about it and put out notices and tweets saying, hey, look, Jan Brewer's in favor of our proposal, which then forced her to come back and say, well, no, I didn't say that. She was specifically talking about the security amendment, and she's withholding judgment, in her words, on the rest of it.
And this whole thing happens because the Congressional Budget Office comes out and says, by the way, this will save untold numbers of dollars. And what the senators said, well, let's use that for security and get some more votes.
Right. Well, and Chuck Schumer of New York actually made that a point during his speech in the Senate, saying basically this bill does a better job at reducing the deficit than deficit reduction bills. And that was a way to sort of get, in his mind, maybe some more deficit hawks on the Republican side joining the pro side of the immigration bill.
Of course, the tricky part is some of the assumptions on there is that, oh, these people are going to start paying taxes. You're making the assumption that a lot of these people aren't paying taxes now with fake Social Security numbers, and that somehow all of a sudden this new tax revenue is going to come in. And that's an iffy question.
The role of John McCain and Jeff Flake in this particular legislation, pretty big.
Tremendous. I mean, you know, especially Flake, very conservative. He's, you know, kind of pulling some of that conservative side, making people think about the issue in a little bit different way, as opposed to just being a Democratic immigration dreamers kind of an issue.
Are Republicans thinking about this issue in a different way?
Boy, I mean, I think some of them are. I mean, I think John McCain has said, and some other Republicans have said, we're in a lot of trouble if we don't do something on this issue come 2014 and 2016. So I think some Republicans are thinking about this differently. But when you look at the House, there's a lot more talk about border, you know, enforcement first, border security first, and no path to citizenship for folks who are here illegally now.
But it sounds like, in the Senate at least, the concept of 30-some-odd billions of dollars for security, untold number of billions of dollars just for building the fence and getting those extra border, that is, and over a 10-year span, by the way, which would coincide with getting that permanent resident card, so you got to kind of go through the motions and show the measurements in the bench. It sounds like, I mean, what else do you want?
I think that's the big question. I think that there are some in the House who want more enforcement and less path to citizenship.
Well, or no path.
Or no path.
Yes.
Well, yes.
You also have another interesting question. Curiously enough, Joe Arpaio piped up this week and said, you will never secure the border, no matter how much you throw down there, that there are always going to be people who can find their way across. And to the extent that you have that as a belief of some Republicans that it doesn't matter, so we might as well just spend all the money on enforcement. It's not like we're going to make a difference. This is going to be a fascinating argument in the House, which has always been very much more conservative on the issue. The Republicans control the place, and you've got a lot of freshmen there who are very set in their ways.
Okay, back to actions have consequences. If the House goes ahead and just tramples all over this, or does something that is perceived as negating the whole thing, impact on elections?
Well, obviously, each side will put out press releases and blaming the other, sort of like the press release we saw today on the student loan rates. And the Democrats will say, but for the Republicans, and the Senate Republicans will say, no, we had a plan, and you know, we understand our House colleagues, and they'll blame each other. Look, to the extent that you have Latinos who actually are getting registered and voting, and that's always been an iffy. We've talked about that how many years at this table. It does make a difference, because if much of the Latino community says, well, wait a second, you promised us this would occur, I think they may look and say, do we really want to leave the House in Republican hands?
But keep in mind, though, with House seats, a lot of the districts around the country are safe for one party or another. So it's almost like you're entirely preaching to the choir when you go back to the district, and there's really no danger of ticking off your constituents by taking a hardline stance, because these districts, either on the right or on the left, are so entrenched that it's just a matter of sort of degrees of either to the left or to the right of someone getting elected.
But that's where leadership comes into play, doesn't it?
Well, up to a point, but I think Mark's point is valid. Look, Trent Franks is not going to get ousted by voters in Lake Havasu City or Sun City West because of his position on immigration. David Schweikert probably in the same situation. The thing is, it's those kind of split districts, which actually are occupied right now by Democrats, you know, the Ron Barbers of the world and the Ann Kirkpatricks.
All right, let's get to state lawmakers.
In trouble.
Rough week. Let's start with Don Shooter, who has had charges filed. Misdemeanors here? What's going on with this charter school thing?
There are 3 misdemeanors, and this goes back, I think, a couple of months, where he went into his grandson's charter school. Later said he had some concerns that that his grandson was not being treated well at school and went in to talk to the teacher, kind of went past some office staff and went directly to the teacher in the classroom, and they ended up calling law enforcement. So yeah, 3 misdemeanors.
And it sounded like Yuma PD wanted more, didn't they?
Well, they had asked for an assault charge, which would have made it a felony. They ended up with like a disorderly conduct, trespass, and interfering with an educational institution, none of which are serious. They're Class 1, Class 2 misdemeanors, but it's still a crime, and it still makes people say, what was he doing there in the first place? I think even he's conceded, well, you know, maybe in hindsight, this wasn't the way to go.
So we're getting a little bit of that, are we?
For sure, yeah. I mean, you know, maybe he should have done things differently. Maybe he came across in a way he didn't realize he came across. I mean, it depends kind of on the story.
But Don always comes across the way he didn't intend to come across.
Right.
Does this lead to ethics investigations next? Because it certainly didn't happen this past session.
Oh, who knows? I mean, it's been a little while since we've had a meeting of the ethics committee, so maybe we're due for one. I don't know if this really rises to the level. And you know, even if somebody files a complaint, you're going to go through the same thing that we've seen before, where the person filing the complaint has to have had personal knowledge of the issue, the ethical misconduct, and other than reading about it or hearing about it through a media outlet or from someone else that they know, no one else in the legislature was in this classroom. Nobody else saw what happened. So maybe somebody files a complaint, maybe they don't, but even if they do, I think it's questionable as to whether or not there's a hearing.
There is a video, though.
There's that, and the fact is the Scotty Bungard situation, in terms of the little situation in the median of the Highway 51, you didn't have other lawmakers seeing it. A lot of it kind of depends on, I think that the Bungard situation and even the Dan Patterson situation in the House left a lot of feelings of, you know, gee, this causes a lot of heartburn. Now, in the end, both of them quit and solved the problem that they would have otherwise had.
Yeah, but I don't think it's meant to be Tums here. It's supposed to cause heartburn. It's not a good thing that's happening.
It's not a good thing. You know, you have to decide, is this simply a question of lawmakers are held to a higher standard than other grandparents who might rush into their classroom? Was it done in his role as a lawmaker? You know, if he goes and says, well, I'm a state senator, well, now you may have crossed the line.
Aaliyah, real quickly before we go, Rick Murphy, just astonishing kind of, but again, an investigation
Correct.
here. So let's talk about what Peoria PD and CPS, what are they investigating?
Both of them are investigating allegations that he molested one of the children in his house. He has both foster kids and adopted kids, and I'm not sure if he has biological children as well, but molested one of the children in his house.
And how he, again...
This is always tricky, and I'm always sensitive to this kind of stuff, A, because it's at the investigative stage. But, you know, look, there's plenty of reasons to criticize Rick Murphy for his actions. Here's a guy who's a foster parent, been involved with CPS, sponsoring legislation dealing with CPS and foster parents, which is, you know, not illegal, perhaps inappropriate. I'm always hesitant, particularly when dealing with these kinds of situations where any kid who is unhappy with a parent, particularly a foster parent, can raise an allegation. I'm not saying he is or is not guilty. We've just got to be very careful on this kind of thing until things shake out. There was an earlier investigation which proved was not borne out in the parlance of CPS. Again, what does this mean? We're going to find out.
And again, we should emphasize not arrested nor charged in either case,
yes.
The one you mentioned prior or this particular one, but no comment from Rick Murphy on this either. So
Correct. He issued a very short statement basically saying that he and his family weren't commenting.
And again, this story just broke today. I think Mary Kay over at the Republic had this one. So we will definitely keep an eye on that one.
Yes.
Good to have you all here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Monday on Arizona Horizon, we will have more on this week's Supreme Court rulings as ASU law professor Paul Bender reviews the High Court session, and we'll learn about a Scottsdale organization that collects excess food to feed the hungry. That's Monday evening, 5:30 and 10 on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, we'll hear how new laws passed this legislative session will impact Arizona cities and towns. Wednesday, we'll check out a study on the safety of voice-activated technology in cars. Thursday, we look at a Phoenix SkyTrain art project at Sky Harbor. And Friday, we will have a special technology and innovation edition of Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
If you have comments about Arizona Horizon, please contact us at one of the addresses on your screen. Your comments may be used on a future edition of Arizona Horizon. Thank you. Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.